podcast. We're back. We're back again for another episode. This time, we have a couple of guests on. And first of all, I'd like to mention that Artem is not available for this week's episode because he ran into technical difficulties in real life. Yeah, that's right. He punctured the tire of his car and unfortunately could not make it in time. But we have two very special guests lined up. First of all, we have the one, the only Rubin Kazan, England branch. We have David Sansun. He was a guest on our podcast a couple of weeks ago. You guys really loved the episode. So, David, what's up? How you doing? How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks. Pretty good. I'm just a bit depressed because we're going into the international break, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that really sums up almost every football fan there is. I know people sometimes say that, oh, the international break is good because you get to see storylines and stuff, but we don't really care. I mean, it's good for romanticism, but no one really cares. The second guest we have this week is another extremely special one. He is, you may know him as the chief editor of Russian Football News. You may know him as the man who runs Russian Football News. And he is also the only Spartak Moscow fan in the northeast of England. And he supports Spartak Moscow and Sunderland, which means that he is a very brave and courageous man. I'd like to welcome on the podcast James Nichols. James Nichols, what's up? How are we doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. To be fair, I'm not quite sure if brave and courageous is just completely mixed with stupid and idiotic. But this weekend, I'm actually quite looking forward to because Sunderland, for once, because we're in League One now, our game is actually postponed. So a weekend without League One football just sounds like glorious to me.
Right. So who are you supposed to play?
I'm supposed to be playing Blackpool, but we've got too many international players, so we're not allowed to play, which is ridiculous considering League One.
Clash of Titans, that really, Blackpool versus Sunderland. But listen, at least you have Hull City in League One this year, so some club of that stature, I guess, a good stature. But this is a Russian football podcast, and this week we have a fair bit to discuss. Again, David initially mentioned that we have the international break, which of course no one likes to see. We're going to get to that in a second. But this week we had the 10th match day of the RPL, which means that you're starting to get an idea of how the league might look at the end of the season. You had a couple of really boring games with Ufa Rotor, Tambov Arsenal Tula. You had Rubin versus Akhmat, which we're going to get to David. We're going to talk to David in a second about that game because he was livid with a few of the calls in that. But the biggest game of the weekend was the Winline Derby, as it was called on Twitter. It's usually called the El Clasico, sometimes even a derby because it's actually not really a derby. But Spartak played against Zenit, and Zenit, and they drew 1-1. Yerokin scored an opener. Ezekiel Pons, minutes after missing an absolute howler, equalized. And James, we're going to start with you on this one. What did you think of the game? Did you watch it? And what are we saying overall for Spartak's outlook this season? James, you there?
He was muted.
Hello.
James.
Sorry. Hello. Back
is.
again. A little technical
Right.
difficulty. Yeah, I watched it live on the YouTube channel, and it was quite an entertaining match. Surprisingly more so than I expected, considering both teams were quite trepidatious going into it. It was one of those where neither will be happy with the win, but neither will be happy with the draw. Sorry, in the end, but
Yeah.
both would have taken it, considering. But I thought Zenit were the better team. They had more of the chances, but Spartak had the bigger chances, if you would call it that. And I remember bemoaning to Alexei, who's an RFN writer and also a big Spartak fan, that it was just parts of it seemed typical Spartak, where they miss a huge chance, which was just a terrible miss as well. Like it was Larson one and the Ezekiel Ponsa one, which was awful miss. And then literally minutes later, go down the other end, forget to pick up a runner, and Zenit do where they get the ball to Dzyuba and he finds Yerokin in the box. And I don't want to have a go at Zenit. It was they played some really nice football, but it was from a Spartak perspective, as you mentioned, it was a little bit disappointing to concede a goal like that. But overall, I think a draw was the fair result, and probably Spartak will be happy with that, considering the gulf of quality in the teams right now.
Would you say that there is a gulf of quality in like the squads, or do you think Zenit squad is extremely superior to Spartak's?
I think Spartak are finally getting towards having the top end talent, which isn't as good as Zenit, but can start to rival Zenit. I mean, Zenit have some of the best players in the league. If you look through their squad from position to position to the spine, in my opinion, they've probably got the best defender in the league, the best midfielder in the league, and the best striker in the league. So the majority of the spine is just like elite level.
Yeah.
Spartak's getting better year in, year out. Gijo was really performing to a very high level. Alex Kral was brilliant at the weekend, and I think he probably got a nosebleed from that assist when he probably went into an opposition box for the first time in his career. And then Jordan Larson's just been an absolute revelation. So the top end of Spartak's level is getting closer to Zenit, but in terms of depth, it's just incomparable. Zenit's second team would probably qualify for Europe.
I don't know if I share that outlook. I think Spartak's squad is capable of winning the league. I think Zenit's squad is good. Obviously, they've got a lot of quality, but I think they've been. I guess maybe Domenico Tedesco does have a lot to do with it. But David, what do you think? What do you think about the squads? How would you compare them? Because I don't personally think that Zenit's second squad would get Europe. I think it would finish maybe 7th or 8th. I don't know. But David, what do you think of the gulf of quality, so to say, between the squads?
It depends what we say for second, because obviously up front Zenit play up Dzyuba and Azmoun. If the second squad meant that they were both injured, then they've got like no other strikers to play there. So that would obviously be a big loss. Imagine Dzyuba got like a fucking 6-month injury, like it'd be curtains for their season pretty much. They rely so massively upon him. I don't know what they would do without him currently. Arguably Zenit have got 3 or 4 of the top players in the league or in the country in terms of Barrios, Dzyuba, Rakitsky. They're probably the best player in the league of their position, and you could probably make a solid case for Karavayev and Douglas Santos as well. Similarly. So it's a very good squad. Spartak's squad is dangerous and by and large a lot younger. In 5 years' time, if the squads stayed the same, if there was transfer bounce of both teams and no one left, then Spartak's squad in 5 years' time was ultimately going to be stronger. But I think currently the Zenit team is the better squad, just about.
That's a fair assessment, I think. And I do think we're gonna get to transfers and stuff in a minute. I think Spartak. Do we all agree that Spartak and Zenit are probably going to be the top 2 at the end of the season?
There should be. That depends on whether Spartak blow up like Spartak usually do or not. But yeah, probably.
Right. So you're confident about Spartak then? I mean, sorry, Zenit, but not Spartak.
No, Zenit will definitely be in the top 2. But I mean, as a Spartak fan, if you're not pessimistic, then you're probably crazy. So
that's great. Yeah, David, what were you saying?
Well, I think we've seen sort of the tree shaking for both teams, or for a lot of, not for both teams, but for like a lot of the big teams. We've seen Sun. Why am I saying Sunderland? We've seen Zenit struggling. Dzyuba was. Well, who was it? Someone was missing for a couple of league games. Well, they just had a couple of games early in the season where they just didn't score. And you're wondering, with the odd injuries here and there, without Driussi, they've sort of been not up to their regular level. And it surprised me, actually. I thought you could have taken Driussi out of that team without making too big of an impact, but they struggled to adapt to start with there. Malcolm's not on the best form at the moment. He's not scored for 10 games. So I think there's signs there that maybe sort of their tree is shaking a little bit, and it won't be as straightforward as you like. And there's a good chasing pack at the moment. Cisco have started the season better than most of us probably expected they would. Sochi are doing well. Lokomotiv, they've added a striker now. How well are they going to do? They'll still be missing Baranov for the season. They've got to hope that Anton steps up to replace Alexei. They're going to be up there at the moment. It's Krasnodar who are the team that are shaking, but I think they've been putting all their energy into qualifying for the Champions League, and so their league form's taken a hit because of that. But it's going to be tight. I think I wouldn't call the top 2. I wouldn't predict any teams for the top 2 at this stage. I think there's a chance that there could be a decent race for the top spots this season, with Zenit, Spartak, Siska, Loko being among them. And Krasnodar, if they get their act together, will come up from behind, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's fair. The real question is, how excited are we to see Sochi in the Europa League next season? That's led by a 38-year-old Christian Noboa and Anton Zabolotny scoring overhead kicks as he did. He actually scored a brace, which actually likes scoring against Rostov, doesn't he? He scored against the kids, and he's scored against the senior team now. A pretty bad result, I think.
It's just intrigued me a bit. So I just wanted to decide to check their XG
God.
for the season, because I'm thinking, are they just outperforming their XG? So if we marked it on XG, they'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They'd be 8th on their XG of goals, and Krasnodar should be top. Top 2 on XG are Krasnodar and Rubin Kazan. Strangely, I wouldn't have expected that.
What?
Well, we don't believe in XG on this podcast, but that is a very interesting fact. Actually, I didn't.
Krasnodar's XG is 20. Rubin's is 19.6. Zenit 19.2, and then there's a big drop to Spartak at 15.7.
How is Rubin's 19.6? They haven't scored 19 goals in a season for about a decade.
Well, somehow we've scored 15 goals, so we're only 4 under our XG at this point.
I would love to see how much of that is purely Kavisha and just creating chances constantly.
Well, yeah, his XGA, which is what I know, his XA, like X assists or whatever, must be pretty good. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could share my screen for this. He's definitely got the highest XA in the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just made me interested, because I just wanted to check, how sustainable is Sochi's start to the season going to be. But not a bad XG in terms of 12. They were overperforming slightly. I could see there on what I pulled up on Understat.
No, that's.
But they've scored 17 goals and their XG is 12. So they're overperforming big time on the XG.
That is actually, I don't let's just say I don't put much faith into that, but I mean, I do think that it does have a place in the game at least. But
a lot of their goals have been from set pieces. Noboa scored 2 or 3 free kicks. They've had a few penalties, which are high XG chances as well, which boost the numbers big time. So it's not necessarily sustainable, but so I'm hoping they drop off the squad. And ultimately, the squad isn't good enough to compete with the top spots or to play in Europe.
That's my problem with XG and XA in general, is that you have certain types of player who people like to call stat padders, where they play like average at best over the course of 90 minutes, but because they're a set piece specialist or a penalty specialist or whatever, they then get their XG padded to an incredible amount. I mean, Maximilian Philipp scored 1 in 3 and had one of the highest XGs in the league. Yet most of the time, for most of the games he was in Russia, he was just abject.
Well, yeah, that's why I think the team XGs are better, because we're looking at, therefore, more like at the chances they're creating. I remember the big one I can recall was how Solskjaer joined Man United, and they had a blinding start under Solskjaer, and everyone was saying, if they're well outperforming their XG, they can't sustain this. And then, within like a couple of months of him taking over, it all went to pot. And they started playing poorly because they weren't putting away all the difficult chances they had been. So,
you know what, about Maximilian Philipp, sorry to go back on that one. There was a stat going around earlier today, which was that out of the 14 goals Bruno Fernandes has scored for United so far, 10 of them have come from the penalty spot. And I think Maximilian Philipp is basically the German Bruno Fernandes, or the other way around. Bruno Fernandes is the German Maximilian Philipp, depending on how you want to look at that. We'll get to his transfer in a second. But to recap the other results, we had Lokomotiv with a win over Khimki. I don't think anybody watched that game, but
I did, of course.
Absolutely not.
I think I watched every game.
Hold up. Did you actually watch the full 90 of Roto Rufa?
Yeah, it was on for the whole game.
Yeah, I watched the full 90 of
Roto
Rufa as well.
Properly paying attention, but I definitely.
Why are you guys watching Roto Rufa, man? That was.
It was a Saturday. I had just woken up. I was just chilling. Thought, let's just stick a bit of football on.
I guess from that approach, I guess it. I guess
Rotter,
it's
I don't know why. I don't know where Zuriko is at the moment, but he wasn't playing, and I think if he was playing, it would have made the game a lot more interesting.
To be fair, David is the person who woke up at 8 a.m. on a Sunday to watch Tomsk versus Amkar Perm once.
David, why do you put yourself through that, man? Tomsk, were they in the Premier League or the FNL?
Yeah, they were in the Premier. I think I was working on them.
Prem.
I think they were
fine. That's
they were in
fine.
the Premier League, and I was working on them on FIFA at the time. So I was,
Okay, that's
okay.
One of the favourite sort of recent events in RFN's history was Ilya, one of the writers, wrote a piece for Sports at RU, and it was profiling the writers, and he mentioned David getting up to watch Tom versus Amkar, and probably the best thing I've ever read was a Russian football fan responding in the comments saying that we're all sadists, and it's brilliant.
No, I mean, listen, man. I think you deserve a Medal of Honor at least for getting up at 8 a.m. to watch that. But no, we're going to get Ilya. I'm glad you mentioned him because we're going to try and get Ilya for the Lokomotiv special of this podcast. But quickly moving on to CSK versus Ural. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been, in a facetious manner, I've been tweeting out that Goncharenko's ultimate goal in life is to play a squad full of 11 central midfielders. And every single week, he actually reaffirms my belief. This time around, he actually played a team with 3 defenders, Fedor Chalov, Akinfeev, and everybody else is a central base midfielder. Okay, Zainuddinov, I mean, it was Tiknisian at left back, but he's still a midfielder. Obliakov,
he's a winger.
I mean,
actually, he was a left back through the academy.
Okay, fine. We'll take that. Kuzyaev,
I'll take that one off you.
David, we don't want logic in the way of narrative here.
Exactly.
It's all midfielders.
Kuzyaev was a midfielder, but he's acting like a striker these days. Zainuddinov is an attacking midfielder, but again, like James said, it fits well with the narrative, so we're going to stick to it. Krasnodar are back to being Krasnodar, qualified for the Champions League, and
Actually, I did not see this game.
Well, it seemed like an interesting game, at least with the new caretaker manager. 2-0 win for Dinamo. Good for them.
Saw the highlights. Saw Martinovic balls up for the second goal.
Yeah, really bad as well. Dinamo actually played quite well. I was surprised at how attacking Dinamo were in such a short space of time. I mean, it's probably just a little bit of getting rid of Novikov, who clearly put the shackles on, and then some of the younger lads in kind of.
No, because their squad is nice. It can easily compete for Europe, and it could have, of course, no squad in the RPL should lose to Lokomotiv Tbilisi. But that team, I think they have a players that can propel them to a higher level. So I'm glad to see them doing well. Now, David, quickly, Rubin Akhmat. Akhmat is, by the way, whole of RFNs. It's their favorite team. Everybody roots for Akhmat. And but David was quite excited on Twitter when Rubin was playing. Kvaratskhelia scored a really, really good goal. Bad defending from Akhmat, but still. And then, David, can you take us through the exact point from where you went from happy to absolutely incensed in the space of a few minutes with the red card and the penalty and so on?
A few minutes in 2 games, this one and Rostov's game, which I'm sure we'll get to. There were 2 really terrible red card calls. Yevtich received a second yellow for holding his arm at shoulder level without touching anyone with it. Apparently, that's enough for a second yellow. I'm sure the clip's on my Twitter feed if you desire to find it. It was not a second yellow. Rubin were in full control of the game at that stage.
Right.
With 11v11. As soon as they got the man advantage, Akhmat just controlled the game and therefore won a penalty not long afterwards, which it was a penalty. I can't deny it wasn't a penalty, but I feel like the penalty would never have been won had it stayed at 11v11, and then we probably would have gone on to score again. But we just, at 10 men, we just had to defend, and it was a very, really poor call. I saw an interview with, I think, the referee who they will get all their consultations for, and he was saying that ultimately he did deserve a red card, but that was because his first tackle was apparently borderline between yellow and red, and the second one you just get a yellow card if you raise your arm, or you can get a yellow card if you raise your arm, but that ultimately it wasn't really a yellow card,
right?
Which I thought was a bit weird. It was an annoying one because we played really well up until that point. So yeah, disappointing.
Yeah. No, I think I watched the highlights of that game. I think Kvicha scored a good goal, but why can I? Are you guys hearing an echo?
It's David's laptop.
Come on. Okay, no worries. I got scared there. But right, moving on to the RPL. By the way, okay, it's the international break, so there's no fixtures this weekend. My bad. But the Champions League group stage and the Europa League group stage draw was on Thursday and Friday respectively. We actually had a stream over on Sportrex. It went down. Let's just say the start was tumultuous because it was the first time we were streaming. So it was mad technical difficulties. We were streaming for 5 minutes before we even realized that we were live. But everybody dropped in. We had James in the chat. We had David for a good time in the chat. And we're going to be doing more of those watch-alongs with hopefully the few the Champions League games. But the groups, the Russian clubs have found themselves in. Let's say, depending on the club, some clubs will be happier than others. Krasnodar have been drawn with Chelsea, Rennes, and Sevilla. Zenit have Dortmund, Bruges, and Lazio, and finally Lokomotiv. Does it matter who Lokomotiv have? I mean, they have Atletico, Bayern, and Red Bull Salzburg. But guys, James, we'll start with you. Who do you think is the most likely to get out of the group, and what are your overall thoughts on these groups?
Oh, I was disappointed you were going to say least likely. I could have just went in on Loco, but most likely it's got to be Zenit. I mean, the quality of the squad, as we mentioned earlier, and then I seen the Mark Bowen was tweeting at the time, and when I was watching the live stream and sort of getting the ideas of what everyone thought, and he was quite disappointed in the draw, which is completely understandable from his point of view, in that he works for Zenit. He wants an exciting tie, probably one in England or Spain or Germany, one of the big teams to challenge themselves against. But from his point of view, it's totally understandable. But ideally, I mean, that's as close to an ideal group that Zenit could have asked for. Now, by no means are they easy games. They're certainly not whatsoever. You don't get easy games in the Champions League unless you are one of those elite level clubs. So, but for Zenit, it's very much a Zenit group where you look at it and you say, well, they could either win that or finish fourth, and I genuinely have no idea where they could finish because all four are quite close. But with Zenit's quality, and if they can manage to keep Dzyuba as moon fit, and if Malcolm gets into a little bit of form, I think they've definitely got a good chance at advancing to the Europa League at the very least.
No, I agree. I think Zenit's group, I think they have a good chance of advancing. I think if they don't get at least the Europa League, then it's a very big disappointment, and they deserve quite a lot of backlash and negativity and hate and all that. Last year they had a group just like you said. I think a group similar to what Krasnodar have, where they could have finished first or last. They I think had Lyon, Benfica, and Leipzig. Two of those clubs obviously made the semi-finals. So, I mean, it was tougher than initially thought. But I think this season Zenit really should get second. Bruges, I think, are beatable with ease. They should beat Bruges, get 6 points there. Dortmund, I think, even if you lose 2 games, it's fine. And Lazio, they've done well in the Serie A, but apparently they have a thin squad. They don't really perform that well in Europe. So let's hope that trend continues. Lokomotiv are definitely the least likely. I'm predicting that they're going to finish with 6 losses, 1 goal scored, and 24 conceded, something like that. But David, what do you think? Who do you think is most likely to get through? And what do you think of Krasnodar's chances specifically?
I'm pretty much of the same opinion. Zenit should get. You hope they can get 2 wins against Bruges. You hope they can get a win at home and a draw away against Lazio, and you'd hope they can maybe get a draw at home against Dortmund and maybe lose away. Krasnodar, obviously, they've beaten Sevilla in the last couple of years in the Europa League in the group stages, as I recall. So while both teams have obviously changed somewhat, they have beaten them before, and I forget who else can go back. Who else was in that group?
Krasnodar's or Zenit?
Chelsea and someone else.
Chelsea, Sevilla, Rennes.
And who?
Chelsea, Sevilla, and Stade Rennes, the French guys.
Oh, Rennes. Yeah, I was like, when Rennes got drawn, I was like, oh yeah, that's a nice draw. It's not a bad draw. But they have. I know they've had a few of their players poached this summer, so maybe they'll struggle still in the Champions League. It's like their first time, I think, in the Champions League. So, as I said on I think our pod last week, I think Chelsea are struggling under Fat Frank, and I think there's wins to be had there. I think they can cause a surprise against Chelsea. We've seen them struggle. They've had a really up and down form this season domestically. Chelsea already to start.
Right.
So I think they could maybe spring a surprise. I think they got a decent chance of doing something in that group. But Zenit, you're the ones you put your money on.
Yeah. I think that group is that Zenit, not Zenit, Krasnodar group is going to be very interesting. I think it's like any of those teams on their day could beat and could perform really, really well, but they're inconsistent. Sevilla, we know they won the Europa League, but they can still be a bit iffy in Europe as well as in Spain. Rennes are top of the league, but they're still sort of new. They're not really proven. If that makes any difference. In Chelsea, we know that they've got a very good squad. They had a great window, but even then, we conceded 3 goals to West Brom. And you never know. You hope that Krasnodar get through. Lokomotiv, you just give them your hopes and prayers and so on. But Zenit definitely, I think, have the best chance. We're in agreement there. Now, the Europa League, Russia only has one contestant in the Europa League, thanks to the heroic efforts of Rostov and Dinamo. CSKA have been drawn in a very Europa League group with Dinamo Zagreb, Feyenoord, and Wolfsburg. I don't know much about any of these teams. That's a very Europa League group. Like I said, you just expect to see all of those teams. But David, what do you think of this group? What we're saying on paper, you'd hope that CSKA get through. Rodolfo Gaich scores 8 goals.
Yeah,
but, what are your thoughts?
I think it's too bad. I think Dinamo Zagreb are on one of their sort of lower parts. Their squad's not got really any real stars in it. Obviously, they're still going to dominate domestically. But I was reading an interview from Sturridge, and he was saying, they've been struggling since they sold Dani Olmo and a couple of other guys. So now's the time to play them. I think they had to qualify through qualifying, and they almost got knocked out. Maybe I can't recall.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not a bad one. Wolfsburg, they're in the groups last year. I think they were against the German Wolfsburg, and I think they beat them in one leg and lost in the other leg. The Austrian teams have been surprisingly strong. We saw Lask destroy Sporting in the qualies. So I think that will be tougher than you might expect the Wolfsburg game.
Mm-hmm.
They're a bit of an unknown quantity for me. I don't really know much about this squad even. I'm just assuming they got a couple of young kids in there, as they normally would.
Right.
So I think, but Cisco are on good form. They've started the season well. I think they can probably do better than they did last time, which is running.
Yeah, it's hard to go. It's hard to do worse than that.
I think they could. I think they've got a decent chance of qualifying out of that.
I mean, yeah, that's all you. On paper, like we say, they should do better if you compare like the finances, the squad value, things like that. But of course, in Europe, Russian clubs, as we know, as we whine about every week on both of our podcasts, they're hardly the most mercurial in Europe. But moving on swiftly, of course, we wish all the Russian clubs best of luck in this. We are going to be covering all of their games on Twitter, on Sportrex, on YouTube, everywhere else. And going to move on to the Russian national team, which has actually been doing better than its clubs, Russia as a country. This international break, no one likes those, but there's 3 games. We've got a friendly against Jordan Larsson's Sweden. You've got a Nations League game against Turkey, and then another against Hungary. James, what are we saying about Sbornaya this break? Do we care, first of all? And what are we saying? What are we saying about?
Well, to be fair, the Nations League is well, actually not. It's a double-edged sword. The Nations League. It in theory, it makes the international breaks more interesting because you haven't got Russia playing in a meaningless match that nobody wants to play and nobody wants to watch. It actually means something going forwards, but what it means is so minimal. I mean, yeah, getting the playoffs. Well, Russia are probably going to qualify for the Euros anyway.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where at least they are playing competitive game, so it's good for the players. They're playing teams in and around their level. But as a result of that, it's arguably some of the most boring international football you can think of in the last 5 years. The first international break a couple of weeks ago, I think at half time there was 12 matches played by Friday, and only 3 of them had goals in.
Yeah,
Now,
I remember that.
of course, there was extenuating circumstances of a lot of the players not playing together for the first time in 9 months and so on. But look, this is international level football. You shouldn't be getting these issues. These issues I would understand in League One when everyone's terrible, but this is international. It's totally different, and like I say, it should be competitive fixtures against solid teams. Russia, I'm actually genuinely don't have a clue what they're doing break by break and how they're going to do, because it's the same every single time where they announce the team. I get annoyed at the team for Cherchesov's horrendous selection, and then get really excited about Russia under-21s because it's the best under-21s we've had in probably since the Soviet Union. And then they go out and absolutely tank someone who you would expect to be a very close game, just like going 3-0 up against Hungary and beating Serbia the way they did, to absolutely slaughtered them, granted through possibly some very good quality but maybe unsustainable goals, and then just basically the blunt instrument up top that is the sheer strength and brute force of Artem Dzyuba, which should never be underestimated. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Russia won all 3 games, but I equally wouldn't be equally as surprised as if they lost all 3. Tomorrow is obviously the Sweden match, and that's not Nations League; it's friendly. As you've mentioned, Larsson's the standout danger, but I'm just salivating at Dzyuba going up against Karl Stahlfeld again because he's frankly he's terrible. I really don't rate him at all. He's not good enough to start for Rubin, and Sweden must have some terrible depth in defence, because if that's who they're starting, then they're in trouble.
Yeah, I think weirdly Sweden have like some sort, like they really highly value the Russian league, because we discussed this during the first international break, is that most European countries value the Russian league more than you'd expect them to. And Sweden, they have Marcus Berg, who's their like main striker. They have Jordan Larsson now. They have Christopher Olsen, Victor Claesson, and now they've called up Karl Starfelt. So I don't know what their ultimate goal is. Maybe they want a full 11 of RPL players. You never know. But I don't know. David, I have a couple of questions. The first is, do you care about these games? What are your thoughts on them? And the second is, me and Artem discussed this, and Artem was basically saying that Russia could consistently perform well in the League A. So you've got, the best teams in Europe, but you still have teams like Sweden, Croatia, Denmark, Iceland, Bosnia. So my question is, do you agree with that? Do you think Russia is a League A quality team? And what are your thoughts on this international break? I know you're not really fond of it. You mentioned it in pre-production, but still.
Yeah, it's like I've grown more fond of it now. Like I never cared for watching England play in the international break because England historically are so dull to watch. World Cup 2018 aside, where they started to play differently, and straight away after the tournament we started playing boring stuff again. But now that I'm following the Russian football, it does add a bit more to it, especially when I can chuck in watching the under-21s. As James said, it's an exciting team together.
Yeah.
The friendly's nice. I'd like to see a bit of experimentation, which Stanny's not exactly renowned for. What doesn't exactly have many players to experiment with. There's only 4 players in the squad who've not got a cap, which is Zhirov, Fomin, Mostovoy, and Sobolev. So you'd like to at the very least see Fomin and Sobolev get a start. They're on good. They're on good form this year in general. So you'd hope they can play. And then the League of Nations stuff. It's just games that they'll happen. They'll pass by. We'll sort of forget about them by the next break. Really. and we just hope that Russia win. The squad's still missing. They're still missing Golovin and Alexei Miranchuk from the squad, so it's still not full strength. But you'd still expect Russia to be able to win both with Dzyuba. Regarding Group A or League A, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If Russia really wanted to, they could just go ultra defensive, and I think they could do a good job of shutting out those teams, and then just hoping to hit them on a couple of breaks with if Golovin's fit, with some pace on the counter with Golovin, Cheryshev, and just getting some balls into Dzyuba. We know how good he is at holding up the ball. I think they'd be fine. You've got Iceland in there at the moment, and they're on their downturn after they've had their good few years, sort of between 2016 and 2018.
Yeah.
But yeah, Russia would do no worse a job in there than Iceland or Bosnia, I'm sure.
No, that's fair, because I think, like you said, Artem was stressing upon the fact that if they really wanted to, they could, shut out teams, and I agreed with that, but I don't think that Russia is on a proper quality level. They're not good enough to, unless they're parking the bus, I don't think they're good enough to compete with Italy and Netherlands and Belgium and those countries. Not right now, at least. Hopefully the under-21s are going to be good enough. Pray that they're going to be good enough. But James, to round off this international break segment, what do you think of how do you think Russia would fare up against some of the European heavyweights?
I don't want to be too cruel on Russia because, like I mentioned before, they beat Serbia, they beat Hungary, and teams that are quite a lot higher ranked to Serbia are anyway in the table, and Serbia are probably more fancied maybe across the rest of Western Europe than Russia's side would be, and certainly more famous than Russia's names. And that was without some of the most influential players by distance. I mean, especially like the three David mentioned, Miranchuk, Alexei Miranchuk, Golovin, and Cheryshev are the three players who play in Europe for a reason, because on their day when they're fit, they are by far the most talented players in that squad. So to defeat Serbia in the way that they did, which was quite comprehensively, in fact, especially in the second half, they outplayed them in the second half, which they didn't in the first. And then you would think that Russia are, as you said, that next level down from the elite, where they aren't elite. Let's get real. Russia's standard of football is not elite level. The standard of players are not at the elite level. But if they do want to shithouse a team, they have a very strong defence and have like I said, Dzyuba is a blunt instrument. But I don't want to be unfair on Dzyuba in that he has a lot more to his game than that. At Spartak, that's all he had. But as he's used his nous and experience, and more so than anything, his mental plays. As he is now the star man in Russia, he is like go-to guy number one. He is the big fish in the biggest of ponds.
Yeah,
he's absolutely thriving under that. He's no longer the one on the out. Like with Spartak, he's hated by the fans because he was so abject, and a lot of that was mental. He was on the outskirts. He was troublesome. They didn't really know how to get the best out of him. They could see that he had quality, and a lot of the time he looked like a cart horse just bumbling around the pitch. He was that bad. Like you wouldn't even send him to a glue factory because nothing stuck up top. And then now he's went to Zenit, and he's became not just the man for Zenit, but the man for the entire nation. It's that penalty that he scored against Spain. There was 250 million people on that, and it was like there was no issue whatsoever. He thrives upon that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep saying blunt instrument because he's much more than that. He's much a better player. He's, for someone who's 6'6" and 200 pounds, whatever it is, he's absolutely 200 kilos. He's got unbelievable good close control. His finish, he's ice cool veins. That one recently, was it against Arsenal Tula?
When the fake shot, right?
Yeah, they faked the keeper, then just kind of like laughed in his face as he was just knocking it into the corner. Like, he didn't care. Like it was brilliant to watch. But at the same time, he's such an absolute unit. It's very difficult for anybody to stop him, to be frank. I mean, at one point in the European campaign, he was the top scorer in Europe. He had the best games to goals ratio in 2019 in any European fixture for Russia only. And he's now, 4 goals behind Sasha Kurzhakov with a third of the games played.
Yeah,
so
he might break that record, I think, in this international break. I think it's doable.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
With his current record, with his current record, it's sooner rather than later. The current rate of scoring, and it's just, to be honest, it's actually brilliant to watch him. I mean, before the 2018 World Cup, we were all, Smolov's the guy. Smolov's going to be the one to take Russia by the hand and ignore the past results that were poor and get us through the home World Cup. And he was on the international GQ. He was a cover of men's GQ in Russia. He was exclusive interviews in the American New York Times in America, and in the Times in England. It was all over Europe. He was the one that everyone was talking about, and then kind of was terrible. And then Dzyuba came on out of nowhere and just stole the show. So it is great to see.
It is great to see. And you know what? We're going to stray off topic as we typically do on this podcast. And you mentioned, now, I personally think that there is one very clear heir to Dzyuba's throne, and that is Alexander Sobolev. I personally think that they are essentially the same type of player. They are both blokes that you would love if they were on their team, but hate if they're against you. Their character, I guess, is similar. And I think Alexander Sobolev, I mean, I've said it that Zenit should pay 10 million or 8 or 9 million, however much money Spartak demand, and just get Sobolev. I don't care if the fans are against him, because he is the only and probably the best replacement you're going to find for Artem Dzyuba. Now, David, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to ask to James first. James, do you agree with that assessment of mine, or do you think that Sobolev is not quite as a carbon copy of a Dzyuba replacement as I think he is?
Well, Sobolev's a little bit of a funny one for me, because this time last year, to be honest, completely honest, when he was banging them in for Krylia, and him and Eldor Shomurodov had 10 and 10, give or take, by the 10 and 20, sorry, by the turn of the year. I was looking through his stats and Instat. I was looking at the XG, how he was scoring, the type of goal he was scoring, the way he was playing compared to the team he was in, and I genuinely thought it was him outperforming. The type of goal he scored seemed like huge XG chances, or ones that it wasn't like Shomurodov, where it was created from nothing. And then I genuinely said at the time, I think he would be the flash in the pan and Shomurodov was the real deal. Now, as things stand a year later, I couldn't be more wrong. And because Sobolev is the one who went to Spartak, I'm so delighted that I couldn't be more wrong. And I do agree that he is kind of the heir to Dzyuba's crown, and I think Stani Cherchesov believes that as well. I think he forced this apology between the two, which, let's get real, it was nothing really. It was a coming together. It was these things happen in football. It was made more than it was because Spartak fans and Twitter kicked off because it was Dzyuba who did it, and then because the media seen them fuming, they all picked up on it. It was literally nothing, and then there was the apology and everything. It was blown out of proportion. But that was Cherchesov, Stan. He had to do that because he sees, I think, that he's the successor to Dzyuba's crown right now and not Nikolai Komlichenko.
Yeah.
And it says a lot that Sobolev's arrival at Spartak is what made Tedesco change his game. Now, I don't mean that Tedesco goes long ball to Sobolev as much. I mean, it happens now and again. Every team needs a plan B. Every team needs that option. But the shift to the 3-4-1-2 was when Sobolev arrived in that January. Before then, 90% of the time, it would have been a back four. Game after game, it would have been a back four, and he made that tactical shift to accommodate Sobolev so he could have him in his team and also get some pace around him. And I think I can see where you're coming from in this comparison. I'm picking up what you're putting down in that sense, that he is a big guy, but he's also got that drive, that mentality, that strong personality. 2 days after his mother passes away, of course he was going to score the opening goal.
Yeah, no, that was emotional.
Against Sochi, it wasn't brilliant. It was, his reaction was quite gut-wrenching, but the way that he grabbed the bull by the horns, grabbed the adversity and just pushed it to one side and looked, this is who I am, this is my job, is really good to see. And it reminded me of Dzyuba, that strong mentality and playing style. He's the big guy, he's the one who wins everything in the air, but he's equally just as talented on the ground. His second goal for Spartak was a he rolled the ball over on his left foot and pinged it bottom far right hand corner. And
Yeah.
you don't really see those sort of moves often from big guys. Obviously, in England, if you would like to make an anachronistic and quite frankly pointless comparison, it would be like Peter Crouch, where everyone would say, "Oh, he's just a big fella who gets the headers," but when in reality, he's actually more talented than that. So yeah, I 100% agree that I think Sobolev is the heir to Dzyuba's crown and not Komlichenko.
So, David, what do you think? Quickly to get off the Sobolev and Dzyuba train.
I don't think they're as similar as you might think. I think Dzyuba is, while they're similar in stature, and Russia has a lot of those strikers, as James did with Komlichenko, and you can go down to Litsenko as well, and even Zabolotny. You know, when Zabolotny joined Zenit, I'm sure a lot of people thought this is the Dzyuba replacement. This is the guy who can do it long term, and then look how that turned out. But I think while they've got similar stature, and Russia has a lot of strikers who are big, who are Dzyuba-esque and who are better with their feet. You know, Dzyuba and Sobolev are both good with their feet. I think Dzyuba's a bit more of a brute and is a bit more dominant.
Right.
I wanted to then check, so I've got Insta up here. Attacking challenges for the RPL. Top is Kvicha, but that's just because he dribbles at everyone. Second is Artem Dzyuba, 177 so far this season. Third is then Eric Bifalvi, and then fourth, with only 7 less than Dzyuba, is Sobolev. So he's putting in the work. He actually has more aerial challenges than Dzyuba, which is interesting. I wish there was a good stat that they had, or I wish there was a stat that existed which sort of summarized like hold-up play. Like it'd be interesting to compare the hold-up play in some way statistically without having to go and watch and time it and stuff. Like we've seen it. I think Sobolev is decent holding up, but is not necessarily in the same style of team that Dzyuba is. Like Dzyuba's hold-up play, it's everything is around him. He's there in the middle. He's the focal point, and he's holding up to get other players in. Whereas for Spartak, they've got a lot of other key players around Sobolev. Sobolev's just a part of that team. You know, you've got Larson there, you've got Bukayev there, you've got Ayrton and Zobnin coming down the wings. They can all be key players getting an attack going. Whereas with Dzyuba, it's literally like, right, Dzyuba's getting that ball. He is going to hold that. You know he's going to hold that up, and you know he's going to get a pass off, whether it's a good pass forwards or whether it's just a simple pass backwards.
Yeah.
Not sure Sobolev's been tested in that same way yet, as to whether he could do that. I think arguably he is the most likely. Komlichenko on that stat is nowhere near. Granted, he's not played as many games. But I think
that's
while he's the biggest striker, he's not a brute. He's not much of a brute as Sobolev or Dzyuba.
I don't think
Litsenko would even be closer. Obviously, he's a lot older, which sort of counts him out. So Sobolev is the closest, but I would take everything with a pinch of salt after what we saw with Zabolotny. We thought these things before. Zabolotny at Tosno was, he was a big striker, he was mobile, and he was good with his feet, just like Sobolev proved to be at Krylia. And then he went to Zenit, and we all know what happened. It did not go well. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I hope that Sobolev does inculcate a bit of that brute strength and that force that you're talking about. Zabolotny comparison, I guess, is fair, but at least the difference would probably be that Sobolev has proven himself at a bigger club, whereas Zabolotny didn't at Zenit. But I guess time will tell. I do hope he gets some. I do hope he gets some minutes in the international break. I would love to see that.
The interesting thing will be, Dzyuba went from Spartak to Zenit. Was that direct, or was it after several loans? I forget. James will know. But
yeah, it's direct.
That was all because of a falling out behind the scenes. I know Spartak obviously still do have a lot of drama around them, but I can't see that personally happening at this stage. It would have to be an incredible breakdown for someone like Sobolev to make that move to Zenit. I feel like if his career makes a downturn, then he'll leave and he'll end up at like Rostov or something like that.
Yeah.
or he stays at Spartak long term, or he gets so good that he goes abroad. Unless something major happened behind the scenes, I can't see him going to Zenit just because I don't think that would happen in the modern era quite so much. And also, I think he probably has a lot of gratitude to Spartak for how they handled what's happened with his mother passing away and stuff. So he has a lot of personal feeling invested in that club and the teammates around him and the staff who are working there. So it would be very, I'd be willing to put good money that he would probably never end up at Zenit.
To quickly jump on your coattails there, David. It was in 2015 when Dzyuba moved to Zenit, and it was on a free transfer after he wound his Spartak contract down. And obviously he did fall out at the time, but Spartak fans were still not happy because you don't go from Spartak to anybody, especially not Zenit, like that on a free transfer when you are being offered. He was offered a new deal, and then they fell out over the contract terms, and he went for nothing. Leonid Fedun said not long after that he would never allow that to happen again. And he didn't mean anyone to go on a free transfer. It's football. The Bosman rule exists. That's impossible to do. And what he meant was that he's never going to let anybody go to Zenit in a cloud. And since then, there's not been a single Spartak player who's actually transferred to Zenit. And Sobolev is really obviously he's signed a 5-year deal, and he'll only go if it is free. And he's very thankful to Tedesco in particular. When Tedesco found out that Sobolev's mother had died, obviously he couldn't go and see him because of the COVID timing. So, but he rang up immediately, literally within minutes. The first thing he did was rang up and consoled him. And I mean, Tedesco's family, his mother at least, I don't know, his father is definitely alive, but he's got very close family. I think it was his auntie. He mentioned in an interview who died not too long ago, and it really affected him. And so he sat on the phone with Sobolev, sat at Sanya for about half an hour and spoke to him, just person to person. And apparently, the players all adore Tedesco behind the scenes because this fiery personality is not. I mean, he's Italian, he's passionate. All the stereotypes exist, but a lot of it's not a facade. But behind the scenes, he's totally different. And the players absolutely adore him. And just as my last little point here, is David mentioned the amount of aerial duels that Sobolev has completed this season. I would presume that a large reason of that is he is Spartak's main weapon in defending set pieces. When he's not on the pitch, they're in absolute shambles. And when he is, he does the job. He doesn't mark players. If you ever watch how Spartak defend a set piece, he's not marking a player. And he's not marking zonally. He attacks the ball. Sobolev's job is to just go and clear the ball no matter what. So when he's not there, it's just a glaring big hole in the centre. And against, I think it was his last start was against Arsenal. And in that game, obviously he's had a few personal issues since then. Not sure what they are off the top of my head. But in that game, he completed 80% of his aerial duels, and it was in double figures as well. So that's probably why he has got such high numbers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Domenico Tedesco. By the way, listeners, we really did not mean to get into a Sobolev breakdown, but it's been a good conversation in my opinion. I think Domenico Tedesco is. I really like the guy. I initially thought that he was a bit mad, and sometimes you feel bad for him, sometimes you feel angry at him, sometimes he can annoy you. But I think he's actually a really good dude and a really good manager. And I think all of his antics on the pitch are just that. They're just antics. They're just for show, if you will. Because if you listen to his press conferences, he's really calm. He speaks in a low tone. He speaks like he doesn't seem like him on the pitch and him on anywhere else. They seem like two different people. But moving on, sticking with the Spartak, we actually have a lot of transfers to discuss this week. It's going to be probably our lengthiest podcast and transfer segment. But Spartak have sent off a couple of their players to Spartak 2 and Spartak 3. Rezvan Mirzov has gone to Khimki, legend. Lomovitsky and Raskazov, two players James is fond of. They've gone to Arsenal Tula. Eldor Shomurodov, we briefly touched on last week. I am really excited about this move. He's gone to Genoa for $7.5 million. Great business by Rostov. I know James and David aren't as optimistic about him as I am, but I hope he tears it up. And Rostov have signed Vladimir Obukov to replace him, which I think is like Barcelona selling Luis Suarez, and the new number 9 is Martin Braithwaite of Middlesbrough fame. That's, I think, comparable. I don't know if you guys agree with that. I think they're going to get Luka Djordjevic as well, who going to get to him in a minute. Now, David, this one, we discussed the Hall of Meme the last time you were on this podcast. Maximilian Philipp, Georgian? German Bruno Fernandes. Is Maximilian Philipp a Hall of Meme player? Yes or no?
No, I don't think he did anything noteworthy enough to be fully memeable. He was just overpriced and
a flop. He was just a flop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
The argument of the ball boy when it wasn't really an argument. It was one of the ball boys. Obviously, when COVID wasn't quite as bad, he didn't give Philipp the ball, and Philipp didn't really do anything. Like, you expected him to do something, and he just kind of stood and stared at this kid, and it was really weird to watch because he stared him in the eye. But it's like the meme that goes on Twitter where he goes, well, Peter Shilton says to Michael Owen, well done, he's 14. It's like, well done, Maxim Philipp, you've just stared out a 12-year-old child. The hell?
He just seemed like a zombie, honestly, every time. I really wanted to believe in him. Even I think there was an episode of your podcast where Andrew Flint absolutely lambasted the poor guy. And I was like, is he that bad? I don't know, man. And then the next couple of games, he was absolutely horrendous. So I just agreed, and I'm glad he's gone. Hope he does well at Wolfsburg. Who cares? But Ioana Nedelciaru has gone to AEK Athens. Great move for AEK. Great move for him. Horrible business by Ufa. Ufa are going down. You heard it here first. They sacked Vadim FC. Their squad is horrible. They need Gazizov back. And I just think they're going down. What else we got? We've got Rostov selling this guy to Salzburg. We've got Krasnodar did some good late business, getting in Chernov and Markov. David mentioned on a chat of ours that they were trying to get Zinkovsky and was it Semyonov?
Yeah, apparently.
It was okay. So anyway,
I think just to get some Russian bodies in there who've got a bit of experience. They might not be top quality players.
Yeah.
But it's better than trying to. If you got injuries, it's better than relying on your kids to come out.
Yeah. But for some depth, I guess it is good because they don't really have a proper replacement for Christian Ramirez, neither for Marcus Berg. So I hope these two guys can fill in there. The three major transfers actually. Emiliano Rigoni, my favorite player of all time, has gone to FC Elche in La Liga, which is, I'm really happy that he's not gone to Sochi. I'm so happy about that. At least he's going to play in the La Liga. He's probably going to score against Real Madrid, knowing our luck. But I'm just honestly delighted and relieved that he's not gone to Sochi. And then the big two are Wendel and Ze Luis. We'll get to Ze Luis first. Lokomotiv. We meme Lokomotiv a lot on this podcast, and it's going to happen again. We're going to do it again. All summer, they already have 4 strikers in their squad, which were Lisakovic, Eder, Smolov, and Djordjevic, who is now deregistered. But I just looked at this transfer table and just thought of the players Lokomotiv were linked to, because all summer they've been striker. Because we want a striker. We really want a striker. I don't even think they need a striker that bad. But they have been crying out. They have been literally trying to sign every striker available. Every mid player that the world has forgotten, they're trying to sign. And David, the last time he came on, he said that their window was absolutely horrible. And I was actually opposing that. I thought their window was good. But looking at the state of their possible transfers, they had Tiquinho, who was apparently in Moscow. Then he ended up going to Shanghai. You had Mario Mandzukic, who wasn't signed because of Kiknadze not knowing the correct exchange rate or something like that. They were linked heavily to Kuzyaev, who ended up going back to Zenit in a Jadon Sancho-esque transfer drama. Gerard Deulofeu get linked to him. Next day he goes to Udinese. Lovre Kalinic linked to him. Next day he goes to Hellas Verona. And every single player, Kvaratskhelia, already at Rubin Kazan. So it's just that they have absolutely zero pull. and they've signed Ze Luis for 7 million, which I think is a lot of money. And Spartak fans obviously aren't really too happy with that. Now, Artem in our chat, he mentioned that, or he asked that, is Eder and Ze Luis the worst strike partnership for a big club in RPL history? And James, considering you have Spartak links and affiliations, what are your thoughts on this transfer? Is Ze Luis horrible? How do you think he'll do? Is it the worst striker duo in RPL history? What are your thoughts on the transfer?
Well, is it the worst striker duo in RPL history? Absolutely. I mean,
It
Eder cannot. I mean, Eder would be fine as a striker if
Not even
a striker's job was everything except scoring goals.
right.
But because a striker's job is scoring goals, he's probably one of the most meme strikers the RPL's had in recent memory. Absolutely terrible. Ze Luis is weird. So when Ze Luis is ahead in the game, playing a big game, playing for the moment, he was absolutely brilliant for Spartak at times. There was a period of time under Carrera, obviously, when Ze Luis, Luis Adriano, and Quincy Promes were in the same team together, and they linked up beautifully. I think it was a goal against Siska or Zenit when the three of them actually linked up, and it was Luis Adriano who finished in the bottom corner, and it was just some brilliant football. But he doesn't have players of Promeses and, well, Luis Adriano when he could be asked quality around him. He's one of those where he is the back to goal guy who brings others into the game a lot of the time. He's not going to go out and get double figures very often. I think he only did it at Spartak once. But when he's not in that mood, he's bloody awful. Like, absolutely terrible. Like, can't even shoot straight. I think one of the greatest shots I've ever seen in my life is the famous, like one of the worst games you'll ever see is Spartak 1, Amkar 0, when Denis Grishakov scored the winner in like the 94th minute or something, when Spartak went on to win the league that year. And at one point, Promes played Ze Luis through 1-on-1, and it was a counter attack. So he was about 20 yards from goal, just outside the penalty area, and he went to hit the ball, completely fell over, hit it with his left foot. The ball rolled out next to the corner flag, and he's just like sitting on the deck without a fucking clue what happened. Sorry, I don't know if I swear or not, but
no, you can say whatever you want. It's fine.
Fine, without a clue what happened, he was just absolutely clueless. So it was one of those games when he doesn't have a clue what's going on. So if him and Eder have one of those games together at the same time, we could be in for truly sort of record-breaking stuff of the worst striker partnership you'll ever see in your life. But neither need to play because Smolov is fine.
See, that's a really good point, because it's like Spartak actually, because Spartak this summer have been linked to every single right back in existence. Serge Aurier, they have Raskazov, they sent him on. They're being linked to some French bloke. They've been linked to about everyone from Brazil. And the thing is, I don't really think that they need a right back that badly. I think a midfielder or something would be a lot better, because Roman Zobnini is playing well there, right? And you could get some other guy to fill in at right back. You're doing well with Roman Zobnin as your first choice. I think what Lokomotiv did is that they just implanted into their brains that they need a striker, when in reality, I think they've got Smolov, who's doing well. I think he deserves a proper shot in the first team. I think he's looking good. He's looking athletic. He's scoring goals. Luka Djordjevic, I think, deserved at least a semblance of a chance, and because I think he would have been on par at least with Ze Luis, even if he didn't score as many, maybe he would have been a bit more consistent. Like you say, Ze Luis is either horrible or really good. They have Lisakovic, who hasn't got much of a chance, but he's looked good whenever he's played. So, David, what do you think of signing Ze Luis for 7 million? And they've actually now got Kamano, who people said is a similar player to Ze Luis, good on his day, but horrible everywhere else. They've got Eder, who's horrible all the time. And now they've got Ze Luis, who is very topsy-turvy. So, David, what are your thoughts on Ze Luis? Do you think Lokomotiv needed a striker? And how bad has their window been? Has it gotten worse for you?
I think, considering they play with one striker, and you're relying on form of Eder or Smolov, both of whom in the last year or so have been, for Lokomotiv, been very unreliable.
Yeah.
Granted, seeing Smolov start the season relatively well. Djordjevic was never really going to be a part of the team after his long-term injury. He didn't really do much before his injury. Lisakovic is more of a wide player, I think, and we're seeing that. He's been played out wide like Kamano would or like Zhemalidinov would, so that's not too bad. I think it's not a bad signing, to be honest. It's made their window slightly better. It's a guy who's got Premier League experience. They could have gone out and picked up Takini, or they could have got Mandzukic, but Zelowish, they know, is comfortable with the language in Russia. They know he's comfortable with playing in the league. They know he can do well in RPL football. Granted, the fee is a bit bigger than you might have hoped for a 29-year-old. But I think it's not a bad signing. I think it could do well for them. I think he'll just jump over Eder in the pecking order, and we'll see him and Smolov sort of playing as the first choice striker, one of those two. Maybe even see Smolov start to be deployed as one of the wide players, or one of the more wide players like Lisakovic or Zhemalidinov, who are, they're wide players, but they're very attacking wide players rather than wingers, or like Moranchuk, or how the Moranchuks used to be played wide. They were deployed wide, but they weren't wide players. They were playmakers playing out on the wings. So I think it's a good upgrade on the squad. I think Eder will run out of chances. He'll run out his contract this year, and then he'll be gone next summer. Djordjevic, he's going to go on. I think that actually the latest was maybe going to Ural on loan today.
Oh my God.
So, and that's actually not bad. They've been playing with Big Falvey up front for the most part, him or Panyukov.
It's boring though.
So I think Djordjevic to Ural is not a bad signing. But yeah, I think it's not a bad deal. I think they did need a striker, because you can't go into a Champions League season relying on Eder or Smolov.
I mean, that's fair.
As for Spartak needing a right back, I think they do need a right back, because if, let's just say, either Zobnin gets an injury, or one of the 2 or 3 main central midfielders get an injury, Zobnin's going to go centre mid, and then who's playing right back? God knows. Yashenko, and no one wants that.
That's true. Nobody wants that.
So they do need a body at right back, and obviously they've had whatever sort of falling out with Raskazov, which is why he's not being used. So
yeah, that's actually was looking at Ze Luis. He's obviously a Cape Verdean national. I thought he was Portuguese, and I thought that if Lokomotiv really wanted to be cunning, they could offer Ze Luis Russian citizenship, and Eder they could offer Russian citizenship. So you could basically have a Joaozinho Ari situation, and Djordjevic wouldn't even need the foreigner limit. But sadly, Ze Luis has been capped 19 times for his country, so that's not going to happen. Now, before we get to Wendel, who is the biggest transfer of this window, I believe, we had a very special case in 28-year-old Armenian defender Varazdat Haroyan, right? Now, you can see on the screen right now, there's a tweet by Hellas Footy, which is a great account about Greek football, by the way. Go and follow them. He was supposed to go to AEL Larissa, which is a decent club in Greece, comparable to, say, Ural or maybe, I guess, I don't know, Dinamo or something like that. And he was set to sign for them. And then he said, by text message, he sent them a message that he had to go and fight in the Armenian war. Now, please don't get it twisted. The war is nothing to joke about, okay? The Armenian-Azerbaijani war is nothing to joke about. We wish for peace. We wish for eventually, everything calms down and there's no death and despair, right? Now, this is people were reacting to this with respect. It's like, oh, okay, respect, man, that's fair. He's not joining a club. He's serving his country. Fair enough. And then yesterday, instead of serving for his country, he has chosen to serve for FC Tambov. And listen, man, all I'm saying is, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but I think there are not signing for Tambov is quite it's a tough decision to make, let's just say, and I think it might actually be a lot less pleasurable because first of all, it's so funny that why do you sign for, like, there's so much wrong about this, right? Because I understand you getting conscripted and you going to fight in war, but then you text message a club owner to say you're going there, and then a week later you sign for Tambov. James, what are your initial thoughts? This is one of the funniest things I've ever read about Russian football.
So, of course, I share your thoughts that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is
It's not
no
a joking
trifle,
matter.
no laughing
Exactly.
matter at all.
Yeah.
Haroyan's actions himself are basically, you have to laugh at him and not the conflict
Hilarious.
because he's an idiot. Look, you didn't want to say it, I'll say it. Quite frankly, I'd rather go to war than live in Tambov.
Okay, there you go. He said what I meant to say. That was James Nichols. That was not me. Please direct all your hate towards him.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, I feel sorry for the Greek club because obviously they are being totally respectful to what he said, and I can't believe that he's actually thought that this is going to be a totally normal thing and that nobody would kind of look at it and be like, what? I mean, it's my reaction was the living embodiment of the blinking white guy meme, just like, what? Why? The irony is that Haroyan's not even that good anyway. I mean, Tambov's central defenders right now are probably better than him already, especially Gritsayenka, and he's dodgy at best. So if anyone, look, Tambov, I'm talking to you directly here, Tambov. If anybody plays for Ural in defense, don't sign them. It's as simple as that. And Haroyan, why the hell would you just blatantly lie about something so serious and think that it's going to be completely fine and get away with it? I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall of the discussions in Greece and with his agent if he has one. Presumably he doesn't, but God, it's honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
I just come in here before we go much further. I was like, obviously, I spotted this yesterday when I was just on the Premier League website, and I saw him get registered. I was like, okay, well that's weird. Thought he was going off the war. So I put that tweet out that's on the screen there. So now, while you were chatting, I was like, well, let's just see if anything else has happened since. Just search his name on Twitter. There's an article on a Spanish website here, which is behind a paywall, so I can't read it fully. It basically just says that the news about him going to the war was fake news, and his agent tells this website that he's surprised almost nobody contacted him about the whereabouts of the player. So I don't know where the war story came from. That would be interesting to check who broke the war story. But according to that particular website, and apparently his agent, I can't read it because it's behind a paywall.
Mm-hmm.
It could well be fake news.
No,
he was going to war.
The plot gets thicker, as they say. But first of all, we got to track down whose idea it was to plot this fake news. Like, which man is out there in his room and he's like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to plant fake news. It's going to be about an Armenian centre-back that no one really cares for, who's just gotten released by the most boring club in the Russian Premier League. He's going to join a decent Greek club. But the news I'm going to say is that he's going to go to war. If you are the guy that planted that story, please get in touch. Okay, is all I'm saying. But then you go and sign for Tambov, which is at least like, okay, even if the news is fake, just go to AEL or just come out with a statement saying, hey, yo, man, it's not me. That transfer was a whole fake ordeal. To sign for Tambov is disrespectful. Like,
it's mad.
It's
a bad, like, it's a classic Tambov signing, like, let's be honest.
Yeah, 100%. It is 100% a classic Tambov signing.
I didn't realize how big the story went. Like, it went over, like, the whole world's media basically went around.
Yeah, it was huge. It was like...
And now I'm just trying to find who broke.
No, even the statement you made in passing, which was that, you know what? I saw him on the Premier League website, and Yo, I thought that was weird because I thought he was gonna go to war. That's a wild sentence in its own.
Yeah.
And to find out that that's fake news, and then he's gone and someone's broken news and lied about it. That's nuts. But moving
Yeah.
on to actual transfers, and if you do find who broke that, let us know. Interrupt us. We had an actual big signing, Wendel. Zenit have had, in my opinion, a very average transfer window. They went and signed Wendel, who is a 23-year-old central midfielder from Sporting Lisbon, a 5-year contract. I know James doesn't know anything about Wendel, neither do I. So, David, do you know much about Wendel? Obviously, we knew that Zenit needs some depth, they need some players. But what are your thoughts on 20 million for Wendel? Do we know much about him? What can we expect?
I have no idea much. I don't know much about him other than that he's been linked to a move to Russia for quite a while. And I know that he's a centre midfielder. The only other things that I know about him are from another RFN stalwart, Joel, who's a Portuguese chap who knows a lot about Russian and Belarusian football. And he said he's. I think the word he specifically used was average, which for Joel, who is very optimistic about even some of the worst players at times, that's quite a bad review to call someone average. Like Joel will defend like some guy in the PFL that I've never heard of and say, oh yeah, he's a good player, because Joel is like encyclopedic, like probably more than me. He knows everyone. He'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's really good, and I'm thinking, is he? I don't think he is. So when Joel's calling someone average, I'm thinking, wow, that's quite a bad review. So but they needed a body in there, and he must be decent enough to have the career he's had. Adding him and Kuzyaev is good backup. If Barrios or Stoyev got injured before that, then they'd have been balls in the midfield. So yeah, not bad. Hopefully he'll do well. He's still young as well. So if he does really well, they can maybe turn a Witzel style profit. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I don't really know much about the guy. All I know is that I searched him on the Twitter search bar, and some people were saying that, oh, he should go for a bit more. He's been one of our best midfielders. Some were like, no, it's a fair deal, 20 million, let him go. Then obviously, whenever you sign any player, there'll always be some people in the comments who are like, oh, thanks for taking him off us. So it was a mixed bunch, let's just say. And yeah, so it's hard to predict, but I guess you guys know too well probably how I feel about spending 12 million on Lovren, and Krasnodar's recent business just illustrates how that could have been better spent. But 20 million on Wendel, I'm sure if you're spending that amount, Javier Ribalta has done well for Zenit so far. I'm just hoping, I hope he's a good player. I hope Zenit can make a nice little profit on him. James, what are your initial thoughts on this transfer, despite us not being that well versed with the player?
Well, in theory, it's one of those that makes sense from a Zenit point of view. I'm going to be honest here. When I seen the photo of him, I thought he was 34. But I have it on good authority that he's a decade younger than that. So it's the right idea of signing where it can either be immediate impact coming from a strong team in a strongish league, strongish team after Lask. Could be an immediate impact. Obviously, Malcolm's been a little bit out of form right now since Sebadrisi's injury against Dinamo. Zenit struggled for a couple of games, didn't score in 2, didn't win in 3. Finally did rectify that once they had Dzyuba and Sobolev back together scoring again. But they needed a winger or central midfielder anyway. They needed bodies in midfield, Zenit, especially for the European campaign. Now, I honestly haven't seen enough of him to be able to judge whether or not he'll be one of the signings to play in the European games or play on the Saturday after. But if you're spending £20 million on a foreign import when you've only got 8 spots in the squad to have a foreigner, then obviously they've seen something in there and they'll think he can make an impact. So it must be for the European games. Either way, it's another body in for Zenit, and they desperately needed that in the midfield.
No, yeah, that's completely right there. I think, go on, David.
Well, you said to interrupt if I found out about Haroyan.
Yeah, I just saw that, and right. We're going back to Varazdat Haroyan. Good luck to Wendel. I hope you're a good player. Good luck. Okay, we're going
Yeah,
back
we
to
don't care
our
now. This is the big one.
This is the big one. Okay, we're gonna spend 3 more hours on this. Okay.
Okay,
So David
I-
has just
Yeah.
sent me a link on Twitter. It's from a website called crimsonscorer.gr. Apparently, a website that specializes with AEL Larissa, the club that was Haroyan was supposed to go to. And they basically included a screenshot, and they claim that a few minutes, I mean, the manager of the captain of the national team of Armenia, Haroyan, informed us that the transfer of the player to AEL is cancelled, at least for this transfer period, because the footballer, like all Armenian citizens up to 40 years old, has been recruited and is already on the battlefield. Now listen, man, I know Tambov don't have a stadium, but it's not that bad. It's not a battlefield. It's not that bad. And then there's also
it's different.
David, you know what? You should read the screenshot because I know I translated.
I think it's just been lost in translation a bit.
Really, what are you saying?
Because he's basically the tech. Well, it's like, I presume this is a message from. Well, as you said, it's a message from Haroyan's agent. So the agent is basically saying that Haroyan's unable to leave Armenia or Europe because of the war. Not because he's fighting in the war. He's just basically saying that he's not able to leave.
You say that.
Presumably, he's still based in Russia, which is why he was able to move to a Russian team. But if he, let's just say, went to Armenia, then to go to Greece, presumably he wouldn't be allowed. So I think the whole story about him going to fight in the war has been very much. It looks like lost in translation.
Right. So look at us with the investigative journalism.
Yeah, but, man. Whoever said this was just a podcast where we chat shit?
No, this is the best thing we've ever done on this podcast. This is actual investigative work. Right. So I'll read the screenshot. I mean, the screenshot for the people that are interested. It basically says, "Hi, sorry for the late reply. Now the war is officially started, so Haroyan can't go out to Europe." That does make sense. I am really sorry now. Difficult times for Armenia. Blah blah blah. We are very happy with your cooperation. Hope this war will finish and everything will be in the right place. God bless all of us. And you are right. I think it has really been lost in translation because the English isn't exactly perfect, and they're, Greek. So maybe with Google Translate messed them up or anything. But yeah, you are right. It is the story is not as juicy as we initially thought it was, but it is still funny. It is still hilarious.
It's brilliant.
It is even with the screenshots and now that we've gotten to the bottom of this, I still think it's great.
I mean, look, let's be realistic about Tambov. We do in RFN as like an umbrella. There's 2 separate podcasts, and this is probably the only time that Tambov have been mentioned for longer than 30 fleeting seconds at all this season.
Yeah, look at Haroyan. This is probably the only time Haroyan has ever been mentioned on the podcast, on any of the podcasts.
Apart from when Andrew scathed him for being terrible at Ural.
I mean, listen, Andrew isn't. Let's just say Andrew isn't polite. You said Joel usually gives good reviews of players. Andrew, I'd say, is the opposite. But I think in Haroyan's case, he's spot on. I've not seen. Actually, to be fair, Andrew does rate. Who's their defender that they just signed? Can't even remember his name.
Stefan Strandberg.
There you go. He treats him like he's the second coming of Maldini. But so I don't know about that. But
it's all right.
It's all right. No, we love. Yeah, he's all right, and he is what he is. Okay. But for the last segment of this podcast, we had a good episode. We are going to talk about free agents. Now, a few years ago, Russian clubs were not as creative, not as intelligent with their scouting. They would pick up random players from random parts. If you're Lokomotiv, you still do that. Still sign Benedict Howardez and Farfan and players like that. But we've essentially got a list here of the most valuable free agents currently available in football. We're not going to cover all of them, but I guess we can start from Mauricio. So you've got Mauricio, Antonio Valencia, Umar Niasse, Hatem Ben Arfa's gone. Asamoah, Mandzukic, Borini, Garay, Pato, Wilshere, Welbeck, Klein, Sturridge. And first question I'm going to go to you, David, is firstly, would you take any of these players at Rubin Kazan? And second, do you think a squad made up of these players, given we can actually make one, how do you think it would do in the RPL?
Would I take any of them at Rubin?
Not even one.
Yeah, I'd probably take
Nathaniel Mendes-Lane.
What?
This guy, Nathaniel Mendes-Lane.
Oh no, I wouldn't take him. Scroll back up to the good ones again. Come on.
Right.
Yeah, take him at Sunderland. Sorry.
I'd
That's fine.
take Valencia to play at right back. Certainly, even though he's 35, take him for a season. Even or Klein, even just any of those would be an upgrade on the right backs we've got currently. Mauricio, who we started with, obviously got the Russian passport, so
Yeah.
I think almost any RPL club would take him, and he'd be a good body in the squad. Nias, obviously,
Oh, bloody hell.
we know what he has done in the Premier League, in the Russian Premier League, not the English Premier League. Obviously, I always felt he got very harsh treatment at Everton. We all know what sort of treatment he got there behind the scenes, which was a bit harsh, and therefore he became a bit of a meme on the pitch whenever he did get a game. And he had good spells where he actually did score goals, but I think he was just very harshly treated. But would stick him in a team like Akhmat, and he probably would score a good amount of goals in the Premier League. I wouldn't take Barini. I think he's terrible, as James would probably attest. I mean,
Jesus Christ, Duncan Watmore.
Proper names on this, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, a squad of that, if you could make a squad out of that list, it would probably compete. Most of the players would never come to the league because they probably think they're better than it. As soon as I saw Welbeck get released, I was like, yeah, man, Lokomotiv, get him in, sign him up. It would be cool. I'm just desperate for an English player to come to Russia again. It would be, it's been so long since Bentley did it, and we had rumours of Stephen Corker doing it, and he turned it down, and John Terry, of course, and he turned it down as well. Just imagine an English player playing in Russia in the modern day. It would be huge news. So it would be cool if something did come off, if someone went in. Like, I'd love Slutsky to go in and pick up fucking Kevin. Who was that? Kevin Stewart was somewhere on that list. I swear I saw.
Yeah, I think he was.
And he definitely managed him at Hull. It's like, just imagine if he went and said, Kevin, come over to Rubin and
Jackson Irvine, actually, our Hull insider Kai Connell, friend of the show, he really rates Jackson Irvine. He's a free agent just released by Hull City. So there's actually quite a few players. James is familiar with Jackson Irvine, of course. But out of this list, I would love to see Samir Nasri, Freddy Guarin, Mitriushkin, of course, is Russian, still without a club. Victor Alvarez was at Tula, still without a club. Yaya Sanogo in the RPL would be great. Shinji Kagawa, love to see it. Who else we got? Mauricio, you said, was Russian. Irvine. Antonio Valencia, Spartak. You need a right back. I mean, what? James, you need a right back, don't you? Could take him or Nathaniel Klein. We've got... Who would you take, James, out of this? Alexander Pato in the RPL would be great.
So Valencia is probably the most sensible option because of his sheer experience and, well, when he had quality when he wasn't 80. But the problem is with this list and free agents in general is that all free agents generally tend to be one of three things, and that's either injury prone, absolute frauds, or on an unbelievably ridiculous amount of money. And then if you just go through this list, you've got like Klein, who's a fraud, Sturridge, who's all three of the above, Welbeck, who's all of the above, Wilshere, who's all of the above, Alexander Pato, who was good when he was 17 and forgot how to play football when he was 19. There's very few. Real Garay would probably be the most likely, purely because of his prior experience. I mean, Ben Arfa's now signed up for Bordeaux, if I remember correctly. But most of these just scream like season in Turkey because they know there's money there.
All of them are going to Turkey. For the past 3 days, I've been going on about how Turkish clubs sign absolutely anyone and everyone. I'm sure there's a club out there in Turkey that would sign all three of us, just because.
Who was that? Who was that club that had? They were top of the league at one point. They might have even won the league. And the team was like...
Yeah, I know you're talking. We are going to talk about Turkish football now. That team is unbelievable.
I want to just
Adebayo.
Yes, they still
Robinho.
have them. Yes. Hold up. Let me read you out their squad, okay? They have Epuriano, they have Martin Skirtle, Boli Bolignoli, Rafael, Junior Caesara. They have Edin Visca. They signed Giuliano this summer. They have Nasser Chadli, Dembaba, and last year they had Robinho and that Robinho, yes, and they had Emmanuel Adebayor. That's just all. That's Turkish club sign anyone, man. Honestly.
Yeah,
But
it's mad. Don't forget Sturridge was in Turkey last year as well.
yeah, and he
Or
played well
at
actually.
some
So,
point,
but
and
he's
he
been
was on the
banned,
list.
isn't he? Because he bet on something.
Yeah, I want to defend
How
Wilson because early in his career he was an absolute baller. Like
Right,
he was destined for the top, if not for injuries.
I mean,
right, question. How the hell is Adrian Mariappa still a footballer, and how is he only 34? He's been like travelling around being crap in the championship for about 15 years now.
oh, you know what? James, remember Stephen Cocker?
Oh wow, is he still a free agent?
He's,
No,
he's everyone is in Turkey, man. I swear, name a player, they'll be in Turkey.
wow. I don't think the reasons why Stephen Kolka was reportedly turned down from Lokomotiv are allowed to be live broadcast, but one of the ones I would recommend any club to stay away from is Duncan Watmore, who's obviously Sunderland fame, the ginger Messi himself. God, he's terrible. He's injury prone, and he's a terrible footballer, and he was on £25,000 a week in League One. So if there's anybody to absolutely avoid, it's him. But an interesting one could probably be Jozo Siminovic, who's a former Celtic central defender who was released by Celtic in the summer. He wasn't on the greatest of wage because Celtic are skint and they can't pay high wages. His injury record's not too bad, so and he's 20 still, so he's probably one of the more slightly better signings on here. But it's just a depressing list of people.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's like one of those, it's like a list of people that you were like, oh, I remember him vaguely. Or it's like a list of people that people like troll football meme for being in the injury room all the time. But there is actually one like RPL, really good RPL player that we haven't, I think that could do a job, and that's Gianelli Imbula. He's on this list after a great spell at Sochi. He made I think he played 18 minutes in that 10-2 win. So you can already figure out how you know what type of player he is. But I mean, if we're being real, I think Miroslav Stoch maybe, Gail Clichy maybe, Mario Mandzukic I think is probably the best player in this entire list.
Yeah.
So
Clichy and Stoch were both at the Istanbul team last year, right?
Stoch was at PAOK, but Clichy was at this. Yeah, it was at that club. Vizhot Başakşehir.
Man, Wilshere, I'd love Wilshere just to get a second wind in his career, man. He was so good for us at times.
God.
But
There's a thoroughly depressing list of
There's
number
all-
of former Sunderland players on this list as well.
Are there any Arsenal players? I mean, actually, yeah, there are. I mean, literally the number 4 on the list is Jack Wilshere, and David just mentioned him. But no, honestly, it would be hilarious. I hope at least one or two of these guys get signed up. At least one. You gotta have one. Hope they all don't go to Turkey. But yeah, guys, we've discussed a lot today. I think we've been going on for over an hour and a half. You guys got anything else?
No, I'm all talked out. Apart from, I expect at least one of the 35-plus-year-olds to certainly sign for Sochi by the end of the year.
David, what about you?
Just pretty pleased with my investigative journalism. So yeah, I'm chilling.
Yeah, that's as always. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the podcast. Artem is we're gonna get Artem. Hopefully, he's back for the next episode. James and David, you guys did really well as super subs and as players. We might actually, you know what? Depending on the response, we might just get you guys in an Artem. He can start another one of his own things. But nah, I'm joking. Anyway, you guys want to plug your socials? James, what's your Twitter account? Of course, follow Russian Football News. Follow at Rus Football News on Twitter. James, what's yours? Because I don't actually remember what your handle is.
Mine's just at James Nichols, Nickels. If you want any football news, don't follow it because I don't really talk much about Russian on my private, mostly just on the RFN account.
Yeah, David,
Mine's been up on screen for a good
For
spell
about,
there.
yeah, that is true. It's
So,
RFN
I-
underscore David. Right. So thanks a lot for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope you loved our investigative journalism and our and James' rant on how bad free agents tend to be. And we'll see you next week.